Welcome to the Day Friday. My name is Michael Olschimke. I'm the CEO of Scalefree. We are having this session here every Friday, 11 o'clock Central European Standard Time, to allow you, the audience, to ask questions about data vaults, a lot of data vault questions that we receive, but also cloud computing, MVP stuff, data mining. That's what we can essentially answer. Every question is allowed. I mean, on these topics, you can use a chat here in the client. You can use the Q&A function in the client. You can also raise your hand for a live question. And I also show you a form after today's session where you can submit your questions, essentially. If you receive multiple questions, I would be cherry picking. I might modify them. Today's question I split into multiple questions, actually, because there were too many different topics in it, essentially, and it's the time box, essentially. If you would receive no questions at all, I promise I will talk about the cluster, but we're getting more questions, which is great. So that's what it should be, essentially. It's my running gag more and more. That's what it is. All right. And I didn't make any progress, to be honest, for a year. It's just sitting there. It's not turned on, right? It's off. So, all right. Let me, I mean, at least the cluster here down here. Let me share my screen. So let's go to some more relevant stuff here. All right. So this is about snapshot dates and frequencies in pit tables. So you know that by design, we talk about pit tables that we load a snapshot date on a regular basis into the pit table. Maybe every day, every hour, something like that. So every day you would load a snapshot date at daytime step at 8 o'clock in the morning into the pit table, and then you do this day by day, essentially. But then here this question is about what if we have different requirements for different frequencies? What if some users need hourly snapshot dates? What if some users need daily snapshot dates and so on, or quarterly snapshot dates and so on, right? How do we deal with this? And so first of all, there's often the question, should we use multiple pit tables for this? Please not. Because what we typically do is we would decide on a finest granularity. So let's say hourly, if that's your finest granularity. And then my base design would load a snapshot into the pit table per hour. That's what we load, essentially. And if you would like to have a weekly snapshot, so we have to define what does it mean? What is your weekly snapshot? Is it the first of the week or last of the week? At what time? 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock? I don't know. So you define this timestamp, what you define as a weekly timestamp. And then you filter for it, essentially. Well, filtering for timestamp, even if you index it, might become a problem because, I mean, performance-wise. So what we do is we create a control table. And let me show you that one. And I'll show you our control table inside at Scalefree, essentially. And the idea is that, and I hope you see it. Hope you see my screen here. Should work, yeah. What we do is we have a table. Where is it? There you go. Okay, so we have control tables. And we have two control tables, which are important here, quite important. One is the load table, control load table, that indicates which load date timestamps or which batches did you process in your database and where are they, essentially. And then we have the control snap table. This one here is essentially the basis for the view here. The table indicates which batches of information did you deliver to the end users. And that's where we essentially insert a row into this control table every hour, every day, whatever, and use this table for loading the pit tables, especially, but also deal with the bridge tables to some extent. So that control table is essentially the central table where we define all the snapshots that should be available. And in this table, we also define, and I can show you this one here, a couple of interesting fields. Let me show you the data here. So for every snapshot, we have a daily snapshot in here. Every day at 7 o'clock UTC, that's 8 o'clock in Germany, we essentially define the snapshot or the information to be delivered on a regular basis. That's sufficient for us internally, right? Let's ignore the replacement column here, but then we indicate using Boolean fields what kind of snapshot is this? Is this a hourly snapshot? Yeah, every daily snapshot must also be an hourly snapshot. But it's not very much important for us. And then a daily snapshot, this should be actually true. Oh, right, boy. And then is weekly, and every 7th snapshot, there should be a weekly snapshot, essentially. Well, this confuses me. This should be true, actually. Then we have a monthly snapshot. Every end of the month, there would be a snapshot, essentially a snapshot being produced, and so on. That's the basic idea. So we use these flags to indicate the frequency of these snapshots, essentially. And yes, we do mistakes here. That's number one. So that's what I would suggest. Instead of filtering on the snapshot somehow with some complicated logic, we prepare the statements, we prepare these decisions essentially to filter for it. And then the second part of this question here. Yeah, so and then what about more specific ones? So let's say you have a specific business process and they would like to have a beginning of the NINS or first or second quartile week to ensure all grades achieved are registered. This is from a university essentially, right? So yes, what I would do is this. I wouldn't create additional columns here because the thing is, I mean, you want to mark certain dates. Like in a bank, we have the same game, the ultimo of the month, for example. The ultimo of the month is the second or the third day, depending on how fast they are able to close the books. And sometimes it takes longer, sometimes not. So you might have, there might be a difference essentially in the ultimo, in the specific calendar day used as the ultimo. And now you could, there's a couple of options. You could add a column. So if you, yeah, I mean, you could add a column. The other option is to use the caption here. To mark the, because the caption is typically, I mean, you use this control table here as a source for a dimension later, for a filter dimension for a dashboard. And the caption becomes the caption you want to show in your dimension essentially, right? And then maybe also these as dimension attributes so people can filter on those attributes. And you either, for a certain scenario, you either mark these records with a different caption. I mean, you could do anything you want here. The birthday of your wife or your husband. I don't know, when you get married, or maybe it's more important business dates for you, right? So maybe a contractual start date or in the incorporation day of the company and so on, right? All kinds of stuff you could do here in these dates. So you can either use the caption to mark those specific dates, but then it's global, right? So that's the other thing. If you don't want to have this globally, then you could add columns here. So that's also absolutely valid. So yeah, just add the columns here to the control table as you need them. That's the point. What we also did is, and that depends now on you a bit, we calculate certain fields in a view on top. Like the most recent snapshot date, the latest one, we mark because we need this apparently for type 1 dimensions, right? So you don't want to go for the maximum snapshot date in a pit table. You want to go for the latest one by using the control table. It's much faster to join. And so we mark this by using a view on top. And you could also use a view to calculate maybe sometimes some of these attributes for your users so they can easily filter those records. So I'm not sure if this date is calculated somehow, or if it's a specific picked one. If you pick it, then you might want to use these control tables for this. And the other thing is the input for the control table. I mean, we just create this table and maintain it inside the database. But for you, what I would suggest is have this table in your master data management system where your users, your business users, can specify the values and they can change those values, right? They can change the captions. They might maybe not modify is daily snapshot or is hour or weekly snapshot, but they want to modify some other certain flags to pick some specific dates for a certain filter condition essentially. So yeah, that's all good. So it's usually the fourth week after each quartile. Yeah, so if you can calculate this using date functions, you could just calculate this in a view and you're done essentially, and then present this to the end users. But you could also pick certain dates when you close the books for real. You pick the date when you're done, and then that becomes your filter condition later on. So adding those columns is fully valid, and we do this essentially. And internally, because I mean this fault is bugging me at the moment. But the reason is, I'm thinking, why is this the case? Why nobody realized this? Well, because that's a daily snapshot. That's our standard snapshot. So nobody's filtering for it. That's why nobody cared. That's why nobody realized, right? So, okay. So, all right. So that's the view on top where we calculate the latest dates, the latest snapshot dates. That's just a window function on top. So, but yeah, it's mostly the latest row. Okay. So, so that brings me to the second page here. So I believe we answered everything here. And yeah, how do you use these filter parameters in practice? What you do is when you query your dimension, so in your dimension view or downstream in your application, you join the control table where you filter for those flags or for certain, typically for these flags essentially. So exactly what's done here is intended business frequency, your end of quartile or whatever, sorry, you would mark and then you go for it, essentially filter for it. That's the idea. Yeah, absolutely. So in your dimension view, that's where you typically do it, because for the information mart, your users define how often they want to apply the snapshot, or how often they want to apply the snapshot dates, and that's what we can do is typically in the dimension query for the dimension information mart. If that's not possible, if they want to have the freedom to choose those, then you just add all these snapshot dates to your dimension, all of them, and then leave it to the end user to use a dimensional filter in the dashboard, essentially. And then they're completely flexible to whatever they want to do. The thing is this, the where condition or the join condition that results from these filters, they're fast to apply in your system. So they're fast. So that's not a concern, right? So filtering down these records. So that's the basic idea, essentially. Okay, so good question. So I did not answer the full question here. So I essentially separated 2 more questions out of this very large question, essentially, which is all good. And so you might we come back to this question essentially at least 2 more times. All right. If you have questions like this, don't hesitate, shoot them up. So when I say we have enough questions, well, we're running out of questions soon, right? So we need more questions. We wouldn't make it to the end of the year. So yeah, use this form here, https://sfr.ee/dbfriday. That's where you can post your questions that we answer here. And there's 2 more webinars that we have, one for DBT, one for Wescape. So check out this URL at the bottom. Yeah, where you can also sign up for those webinars. Super interesting, once a month. And then check out the Data Vault Innovators community, DVIC, as you call it. That's essentially a forum where you can post questions as well, where we answer them as fast as we can. So we can, when you can't wait for next Friday, sign up here and use this form essentially. Thanks for joining today. I hope to see you next Friday. And yeah, shoot questions. Happy to answer them. Thank you guys. Enjoy your weekend.